to DDOcast episode 331, recorded the weekend of April 5th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, I'll be doing most of the show by myself, but I have some guests for the roundtable discussion, which we'll get to later. This week's screenshot, Targul finds beauty in death in the 166th screenshot of the week. Thanks for sending in this interesting screenshot. It is quite an interesting one. I'm not actually even sure where that one is myself. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Google Plus Hangouts, YouTube, or from our website at DDOcast.com. DDOcast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days, usually on the weekends, by Sunday at least. Usually try and get them pushed out by then. The next show will probably be on Saturday. I think that's, April 12th. I'm not really sure exactly when yet, but that's kind of what I'm shooting for. You can stay updated by following us on social media pages or our website, DDOcast.com, with the calendar. On the podcast this week, some news from Major Mal and on character balance, and also for the roundtable, we're going to have a kind of a review of Update 21 with myself and a couple folks that I play with. Game news for the week. Update 21 Patch 1 will come out on Monday, April 7th. There will be a downtime from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time to bring that up. Major Mal had some big news this week. He has been promoted. He has crossed over to live producer on DDO. He is now Vivain's right hand. Most of his day is spent making law out of chaos, be it the live servers, back-end stuff, those kobolds and QA complaining about something, and design meetings. He's totally psyched about this new role, as he should be. So congratulations to Major Mal. He was also looking for a new forum name, I think, to reflect the change. On April Fool's Day this week, we had the Bacon Forums, kind of just the April Fool's shenanigans for the week, or for the year. And basically, Cordovan created a whole set of forums and sub-forums about bacon. And players and devs alike joined in the fun. There's some interesting bacon recipes that went up with that, as well as some other pictures and anecdotes about bacon. Raguel posted a fairly lengthy post about character balance and the update on that, and so I will read/summarize some of that. They've read the forum post and tied the surveys and want to echo back what they've heard from us, along with some of their own thoughts on specific points. There's definitely even more feedback they've got notes on than just the stuff they're listing here, but this highlights the most common and passionate feedbacks. The presumption is that most of the comments are about Epic Elite, as explicitly mentioned by several players. For most characters, it's hard to stay alive unless you avoid damage entirely. Melee monsters hit very hard. This pushes towards playing ranged characters to avoid most monster melee damage. The most dangerous ranged enemies tend to be casters using spells that can be avoided with reflex saving throws, which makes evasion the best way to mitigate ranged damage. On the topic of monsters, damage per hit from melee monsters is very high, even if you are building to mitigate it. It may be okay to hit this hard against robe-wearing arcane casters, but our characters should be able to greatly reduce this damage with medium or heavy armor, appropriate feats, enhancements, destiny choices, or other itemization. Some other statistics may need looking at for monsters, including hit points, saving throws, and the DCs of monster abilities. On balance changes, there's a wide variety of general opinions, including everything from buff everything, to nerf everything, to balance nothing, to have a vision at Turbine and do the right thing. Each of these repeated by multiple people. The best course probably involves some elements of all of these comments, but both buffing and nerfing, possibly including nerfing monsters. Many players have urged caution with any changes, specifically to minimize collateral damage. As a result, if changes are made to nerf Moncture Fury shots, don't rank Monks, Rangers, and other Fury of the Wild characters, and all ranged characters at the same time. Favor the Scalpel over the Sledgehammer. On diversity, a few seemed concerned that balance meant making everything the same. That's not the goal, and the diversity of different build options represents one of the greatest strengths of DDO. The major reason they want to balance anything would be to make more builds feel viable and fun to play, even in the most difficult quests. On synergy, many players noted that overpowered builds combine amazing synergies that may or may not have been intended. These are occasional combinations that produce unanticipated results, but generally speaking, we aim to provide some synergies in character building. It's okay for certain combos to be more than the sum of their parts, as long as there's lots of different synergies that don't end up too far apart from each other in terms of fun and viability. On the topic of survival and defense, they're thinking about the possibility of making some changes to how armor and shields work, with the goal of making medium and heavy armor more viable forms of defense in epic combat. These discussions are at most preliminary stages, but they're aware there are some issues there. On multi-classing, ignoring enhancements, this could be another entire discussion, but many players thought it was crazy that multi-classing wasn't the forefront of the discussion, so let's talk. They like being D&D, and they are unlikely to significantly alter or remove core feats or abilities from classes or races. Evasion is probably the single biggest draw for taking 2 rogue or 2 monk levels. However, we may think about how common reflex saving throws are versus other saving throws, and other no-save effects that feel fair for monsters and players both. This would be a long-reaching goal and would need to be made in concert with other changes, such as making sure that players aren't simply dying if evasion was the only thing keeping most characters alive. I don't know. I think if evasion was the only thing that keeping most characters alive, they're erring on the side of one-trick pony. Kill him some more. Be good for him. In terms of the enhancement trees, the enhancement pass in Update 19 certainly affected multi-classing. As a matter of learning from history, here are some reasons why, which we were mostly aware of at the time. Front-loading and minimizing changes to characters. Many popular and powerful abilities are front-loaded. They are on lower tiers in the enhancement trees. This was a conscious decision so that most characters would still get the most out of what they desired without much hassle. They knew this would incentivize multi-classing, but decided that was an acceptable cost. Even with this, during the enhancement pass, there was a great deal of outcry. This is something we could make incremental changes to effect, but each change would probably make some subset of players upset, and they're in no hurry to revamp everything and move everything around. Giant tangential discussion for another time or place. Class enhancement trees aren't a simple solution to this. The number of enhancement trees, a major part of the original design, intended to present a choice as well as help balance multi-class build versus pure builds, was a limit of 3 enhancement trees. They changed that to 6. So essentially they changed it due to feedback at the time, knowing it would help lead to the rise of multi-class characters, which it definitely did. This is one of those places where we had a vision, but it simply wasn't accepted by the community at large, which is not to place the blame on anyone. They wanted to strike a balance between design considerations and the desires of people who play the game, so they changed it to 6 class trees, which I think was probably a good choice. And definitely multi-classing took off as a result, which was a really good thing too. So, in terms of class level requirements, the update 18 enhancements largely required 6, 12, and 18 class levels to get the good stuff, both internally amongst the design team and publicly amongst the players during the enhancement pass. A great variety of class level restrictions were proposed for the 5-tier trees we have now. These included some very strong calls for 1, 3, 6, 12, 18, similar to the old system, all the way down to not requiring any class levels at all, essentially just requiring access to the tree. Morgul takes personal responsibility for fighting for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 system we have today, which was the goal of meaningful choices, along with interesting possible builds. Instead of nearly every build being 20, 18, 2, maybe 12, 6, 2, there's a much wider variety of builds that players consider and are actually taking. Along with the third core enhancement requiring level 6, there's at least some real reasons to want anywhere from 1 to 6 class levels at least, and there are definitely some builds that splash 2, 3, and 4 levels for specific enhancements and synergies. While those do provide extra power, they also provide a much wider array of possible choices while still being choices, compared to only requiring 1 level of class to access the entire tree. There's some debate that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 was too generous, but this isn't something they are going to change lightly. In terms of the frequency and speed of changes, in the forums, many players agreed that if something was going to be changed, it should be changed right away. However, there were some interesting notes, such as sometimes it takes a long time before the synergy of certain things gets popular and then is perceived as overpowered. Many months sometimes. Just because people discover a synergy straight away doesn't mean it should be automatically be nerfed. Also, the survey responses suggested that they should try to avoid any kind of immediate knee-jerk reaction. On a contemporary note, when something is nerfed for Divine Crusader on Lamania or between Lamania and live launch of the patch, this is sometimes an example of this in action. With their efforts to try to get features in front of players on Lamania sooner, you're likely to see more changes, including nerfs, although it's difficult for designers to even think about changes as nerfs for a feature that has never been live. Internally, at Turbine, a design may change many times before players even see it. The power level is going up and down all the time. What specific items do players consider overpowered? Major caveat: anything considered overpowered by some is also loved by others, and they are aware of this. Anything on this list is also not automatically going to be nerfed, changed, or changed in a particular way, but there are things that we may take a closer look at. There's quite a few other possibilities they might look at, but these are near the top of the list for discussion. Ranged Fury of Wild, monks using 10k stars and mini shot, or monctures, and blade forward reconstruct. In regards to the survey, they had some graphs on there as well. So if you wanted to check out what the survey kind of showed, you can go check out those graphs. But that's more or less what they got from feedback. Again, there's some other stuff that they got that they're not really didn't really address in there. It was a very lengthy post. But that's pretty much the sum of the news for the week. It's pretty slow news-wise. They're getting ready to launch Patch 1 and the Divine Crusader. Bonus days. The cards for the anniversary event are running through April 6th. That would be the day that this recording will come out. And also, you can get plus 30% challenge rewards through April 6th, also the day that this comes out. Store news for the week. These will go through April 13th. You can get double bonus points. So if you go buy some points, you'll get a lot of extra bonus points. So good time to buy some turbine points if you've been waiting. You can also get 25% off of character slots, questing tools, healing items, and spell point potions. And the freebie for the week is a nice one, a Lesser XP Elixir. The code is LEXP44. You can get one per account. On the community news front, the 87th DDO Chronicle came out. It highlighted a help channel on Starlona. Basically, what's going on is they are creating a channel that you can get help from, no matter where you're at. In every server, there's an advice channel which you can access by typing /A or /advice, and those channels, though, are, while public and open for everyone to use, they are kind of instance-based. So they're a little kind of wide instance-based. So if you're in the market area or in Market Quest, you'll have access to the Market Advice channel. So it's not worldwide. But Starlona has one that some players have set up using user channels so that you can do that. And it's just join channel help is the command, /join channel help. That's their channel. And you can use that to to chat with people all across the world. The Stormcloaks are a newer guild on Arganessen looking to grow. The guild is currently level 10 and is seeking players at any level. You can find a member for that. The Chronicle comment for the week. Someone writes a book about your favorite character in DDO. What is the title of the book? Boy, I don't know. It'd be tough to even say what favorite character in DDO is, although I think probably just go with a Stormreaver history book, just because there's a lot of stuff going on with the Stormreaver, and you could write a nice, fun history book and lore and everything with that. There was a community update video, which we'll link to in the show notes, although pretty much everything that was covered in there we will have covered. And Cordovan, for the Twitch TV this week, ran with Mortal Voyage, a permadeath guild. Good fun. You can check that out. Blogs for the week. Jeff Hannett on DDO Gamer was talking about game balance. So we'll link to that in the show notes, kind of coming out of the player balance thread that Vargil was starting up. Events to let you know about, PAX East, which is this coming weekend, the next weekend. There is going to be a meetup, an unofficial meetup at the Green Dragon Tavern. It will start around 7 o'clock and officially go until 9 o'clock, as official as anything that's unofficial can go. Although the odds that it goes later than 9 are also pretty good. It does look like there's a $5 cover charge after 9:30, though. You can... if you are interested, the plan is to meet anyone who would want to get there as a group at the entrance space of the Boston Convention Center after the exhibit hall closes at 6 p.m. They'll head for public transportation around 6:30. If you aren't going to the con but want to attend the event, that's cool too. Just meet us there around 7. They'll be the folks with the DDO swag. So you can meet Jerry there. He's kind of organizing all of that. News for DDOcast. The raffle for the anniversary cards will go through basically until I record the next show, Saturday morning sometime. So basically, get your cards to me by Friday night on April 11th. And then I'll start drawing from there. Again, if you haven't heard, basically we're just doing a raffle with the anniversary cards. So you send me your raffle or your anniversary cards as raffle tickets. You get one ticket for every card you send me. And you send those to the character DDOcast1, everything's spelled out. So not the number one, but one as in the word. And then basically I count all those up, and I'm giving away some points and some owlbears. And I'm going to give away probably a little more than half of the cards on each server. We have a nice thorough forum post that we will link to, so you can catch that. It's time for the roundtable discussion, and what this is I met some of my fellow gillies in game, and we just had a discussion about the content for Update 21. So we're going to go ahead and play that. Please enjoy. Hello, DDOcast listeners. This is Shamgar coming to you with a couple of friends from Khyber. We're going to do an Update 21 review of just kind of our perception of the content released with Update 21. But first, before we start, I'm going to introduce who I have with me here today. First up is Kay. You'll remember him from our TR tips. So Kay, why don't you say hi, and then just kind of give us an idea of what your play style is.
Hi. What was it you asked for?
What describe your play style. Give an idea of what perspective you're coming from.
My main is a range, and I play a Sharadi caster on the set. And I've just started playing my rogue again. I definitely like the not direct melee. I don't know. I like my skills. I think that's actually a good way to put it. I was thinking about that this morning. Meaning, I really like playing tunes with skills. So usually a medium int, and they can do more than their primary function.
And you also do a lot of reincarnating.
Yes, I also do lots and lots of reincarnating.
All right. Next to introduce, we'll introduce Norg. Then same question, Norg. Just kind of introduce yourself, say hi, and then just give us an idea of your play style, what you kind of like to run, and what you kind of like to play, that kind of stuff.
Hi, my name's Norg, and I like to run bards, tanks, some range, like bow range kind of style. And just melee, healers as well. So like healers, bard, range, some tanks, and some melee. I was expecting Mantra to chime in with melee, but
I was just waiting politely for you to finish. Now I'm just going to mention to the listeners that melee is actually not some sort of happy meal. It's Nor's way of saying melee. So frontline combat.
I don't like TRing as much as Mantra, Dirt Big there, or K I should say, is whatever he's going for this time. I'm really an end game type player. I love raiding. I've just led and run tons and tons of raids, and I just like playing the end game a lot. I do have a lot of characters, though, that I've leveled up over the years.
You'll find through our conversation here that we all know each other. We're all in the same guild. Norg is typically our raid leader when we're running raids, unless he's nowhere to be found. But he definitely is kind of the big motivating factor in getting us to run raids and the major leader of those raids. So, next up we have Art. So same question, Art. Just say hi to the folks, introduce yourself, and give us an idea of what kind of build you like to play and what kind of content you like to run.
Hey, my name's Art, obviously. Basically, me, very similar to Norg, like to play a lot of specialty classes, specifically healers. I'm okay with my Bard, but realistically, I tend to find that I actually play a lot of characters that end up supporting the rest of the group. I think it's really common in our guild that what ends up happening is we all sort of chip in a lot of different ways. So if you have a tune that has something like UMD, like a artificer or a rogue or something, you can always sort of chip in and make it work. So usually that's what ends up happening with me. I have a lot of tunes because I really like to have a lot of UMD, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I don't have a lot of time to do a lot of TRing like our buddy Kay here, but I like to play a lot of different tunes or characters, builds, mainly straight builds, not a lot of mostly pure stuff. And the reason being is I like to sort of see how the game progresses, and then as the mods change and whatnot, there's always some kind of change, and everybody sort of chases this particular build. But I like to see how the base ones always do, and then we'll sort of go from there. Hopefully that's a decent explanation.
Yeah, I think it's good. And just remind listeners, I tend to kind of fall a little bit in the middle. I've done a little bit of reincarnating, but I tend to spend most of my time at endgame. But I have a lot of characters. I have one of every class. I like playing pretty much everything. I like having a lot of different options and kind of play with all at least the basic concepts of what you can do. I don't have a lot of multi-classers, but kind of all my characters are kind of have their own theme in mind with how they play compared to my other stable of tunes. So let's talk about the haunted halls and what our thoughts about running the haunted halls. Let's start with Kay, because I know you've been in there a lot. What do you think about haunted halls?
Well, I guess first I should just touch on, you mentioned what kind of content we like running too. I mean, I do all my reincarnating, but I gotta be honest, this last mod, including haunted halls and the 2 raids, it got me right back to playing endgame content. It's fun. I think they did a really good job. There's some decent loot in there, which they get us to keep on running it with. I mean, you're after that, but it's actually a fun quest for a few reasons. I think you can definitely feel that it comes from an actual module. You can feel that they tried to stay true to a few things in there, it's great. It adds some real flavor to the game for sure. And then on top of that, it's just, I don't know, it's a big enough place where you can, I know the place pretty well, and I still don't feel like, I mean, most other quests I would know completely by now, but there's still areas to explore in there, and then of course the fact that they gave you a couple different settings to run it on is really great as well. It just extends the fun of it.
Awesome. How about Art? Have you run haunted halls yet?
I have, but not extensively. Usually that's the thing that'll come up is, well, now that we're sort of in raids, but before, when it was sort of somewhat regular, usually what will happen is you'll get a mixed group of people who might want to start sort of running and farming it for different aspects, and they've sort of figured out a few things. But at the same time, it's always nice to kind of go through that kind of quest where there seems to be a bunch of variability in how it sort of plays out, and then it seems expansive, and it seems like all these little pockets and areas of different things that kind of go on, which is kind of nice. I actually quite like it too.
And then let's go to Norg. Give us your thoughts on haunted halls.
I've actually played the module within a year, about 9 months ago or so, and I think that DDO did a really good job of capturing the module. The only thing that I noticed right off that it's missing is there's a Spear of Annihilation trap in the module that one of my buddies in pen and paper stuck his head into, and he didn't know what it was, and he died. But anyway.
Why wouldn't you stick your head into something?
I have no idea, but he's playing a barbarian, so he thought that's what he should do. But yeah, I really like it. I like what Kay mentioned about the different how you can do an extended version. I thought think that's great. Some of the different bosses are really fun. They're really different kinds of challenges, different kinds of concepts. I mean, anything from the dragon at the end to the doppelganger or whatever. I think, and the traps. I think I've heard a lot of people that play rogues really love it because there's just tons of traps, and they get to do play that kind of game as well. So
traps that will kill you on Elite for a change.
There's traps that kill you on normal. The one thing that I noticed really right off the bat is it felt like a dungeon crawl. It feels like you're playing pen and paper. It has a much slower, or at least is probably because I have not very familiar with it, but so I'm not really zerging through the whole thing, trying to figure out what's going on. But it felt like a much slower pacing and like trying to figure out where you're going. It probably helped that the first thing I really did when I got in the dungeon was open a door that just instantly killed me. So it kind of puts the fear of the DM into you. So it's kind of like reminds me back when I was playing pen and paper, particularly with some let's say malicious DMs where you'd pull out the 10-foot pole and start tapping the floor in front of you as hard as you could to try and find all the traps before you set them off yourself. So I really liked that feel.
Did you ever do the search every 10-foot thing?
Not generally with that DM because the way we did our pen and paper group was we kind of cycled through who was the DM. A couple of us would cycle through DM. He was actually the group's rogue, so when he was DMing, the group didn't have anyone who could find any traps. And he was the guy who liked to use the modules with like the massive traps. Like if you step in the wrong 10-foot or the wrong 5x5 square, you're dead. So that was always a little bit of a trick. So yeah, I really like also, I want to mention in that is there's a lot of uses of various skills. So there's a lot of different ways to get past a lot of the challenges. So you can use, there's actually a use for the skill listen in the game now for one quest. So that's kind of fun. Does anyone run the commentary mode?
No, I have, but I don't. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I only did the first. I didn't do the extended version on it, but
I did run it on commentary. That's definitely kind of fun. It's always fun to have the insights of whoever's making them. It really gives you an appreciation, I find. As much as I enjoyed it before, I think I enjoyed it quite a bit more after that. You have the history on it. And as with anything on this whole planet, when you know about something, I shouldn't say anything, but almost everything. When you know things about it, it's always going to be more interesting, that's for sure. The history, the reasons, the inspirations, and just funny little stories, right?
Awesome. So let's just go quickly around the table and give Haunted Halls a grade. Use the ABC grade school grade. We'll start with Art.
Oh, I'd give it an A. It's quite a good quest.
And Norg?
I give it an A. I think it's top 10 quest ever made in DDO.
And K?
And I concur. I think it's fantastic. So if they put something like that out with each mod, I mean, this game could go for a long time.
Be a lot of work to put one out for each mod. I'm going to give it a solid A as well. It's solid content, a lot of fun to run, good replayability as well. So let's move on to the Thunderholm Explorer area, and we'll start with Art this time.
Actually, I thought it was quite interesting. You know, some of the things that I've always thought about in other games is that usually you'll go through certain areas where there'll just be like tons of mobs, and in this case, that's what they've done here too. So as you're trying to get somewhere, obviously you're going to encounter a bunch of things, and obviously get a chance to kill it. I suppose the one bad thing is that, well, maybe just an aspect of how DDO works or and whatnot, that sometimes you can obviously sort of invis to kind of get past certain mobs, at least kind of get where you're going, to make it a little bit quicker as you sort of like help to get flagged and whatnot.
Hey, how about Norg? Why don't you go next on Thunderholm?
I like that there's a lot of different monster types in there. I mean, there's a fair number of skeletons, but I thought overall there was a lot of different monster types in some different areas. It had a good crawl feel, like a little bit like, I mean, not as extensive as Haunted Halls, but like Haunted Halls. I thought it was pretty good, and it introduced the mirror puzzles as well. So that was a good practice for people before the Temple of Death Room raid.
Yeah, that was a really good touch. I like the one thing I'll mention here too is I like the flagging mechanic for what you need to do to get into the raids, which is in the Thunderholm Explorer area. Not very difficult at all. It takes a little bit of effort to do, particularly if you don't really know what to do or where to go to find the two monsters you have to kill. And the emissary is pretty a pretty challenging boss in and of herself. But I like how it's kill them once and you're flagged, so it was a good mechanic for that as well. And definitely a lot of mobs. I think just flagging one guy with a 100% plus Slayer pot, and I got up to just over 400 Slayers, and we invis past some stuff as well. I think my only negative thing with it would be I think the Slayer count needs to go a little higher, because I think it only goes up to 7,500 kills, and that's not very hard to get to in this Explorer area at all. Kay, why don't you round us out here with the Thunderholm?
Really well done area. I loved the Underdark and Schindlerin, and this kind of had a lot of the same feel. As you guys mentioned, the mechanic of flagging, but I agree with you. One thing I really like though specifically is that it feels like it leads you into those raids. When you drop down and you see the Shadow City. I think that's just fantastic. It's amazing. And it really, sets the stage for the raid, as well as even you can feel you're climbing up on the other one, and feels like you do come out of it. It's funny because I run the raids all the time without doing the areas, but I certainly feel like that it's still very current. That I just came through that area and I'm heading into this big temple. We're on top of the mountain. It's fantastic. I love it.
I also like how there's different kind of areas, and they have very different architecture and a look and a feel to them as well. So let's go around with our letter grades real quick. Again, let's go with K first.
Thunderholm. As far as Explorer areas go, solid 9.
All right, Norg?
I'll go with a B on that.
Okay.
About an 8.
Art?
Yeah, I'll say the same, about an 8. Actually, this is a good question too. I'm not sure if this is part of the module lore. Is that sort of how it's supposed to be? When you kind of go to the other section where you just kind of go through the forge and whatnot, and that whole deep section where you're kind of going deeper and deeper. Is that kind of part of the module?
I think so. I think that's the intent, is to have that be part of it. Because I believe the lore is something along the lines that the dwarves kind of started about where you enter, and then as they got deeper, they ran into the Shadow Dragon's lair. Kind of very similar to the Mines of Moria kind of theme from Lord of the Rings.
And the Balrog.
Yeah, okay.
Except instead of a Balrog, it's a Shadow Dragon.
I don't really have a lot of I don't have a lot of reference outside of popular media kind of stuff. So I was almost felt like, I wonder if that's sort of along the same lines of what they're trying to do, or if that's what it's actually based off of.
I'm sure the Explorer points.
I
I'm sure the Explorer points kind of indicate what the lore is. And they had a little bit of that behind the scenes on the forums, and kind of talking about what they were doing when they were doing some walkthroughs and stuff like that as well. I'd probably give it a B+. It's a pretty solid area. Maybe a few too many dwarven skeletons for me, but that's okay. So let's move on to the Fire Peaks raid. This is the one that has 2 red dragons, a mated pair of red dragons, and an artifact at the top of the mountain. And let's start off with Norg. Give us your feedback on the Fire Peaks raid.
Oh, I like the it's kind of short and sweet, and it's definitely not an, I shouldn't say melee, but it's definitely a quick battle-oriented raid. So it's kind of a nice combination with the other raid. I like the concept of the separating the dragons into two sides, and that there is a fair number of trash mobs to deal with. I do got to say that I've been on the forums about this, that I'm not real pleased with the way it's set up for melee in the raid. Now, tanks can do something in there, but melee are less effective overall unless they're doing a legendary dreadnought. So if you're like an assassin rogue or something, I just want to make that point out. Although EIN monks aren't too shabby, but just point that out. But I thought it's definitely a good raid, especially in combination with the other raid.
Art, how about your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually don't mind it either for those same points. Part of it, I think, is it kind of reminds me of sort of the differences and challenges, like, say, Fall of Truth, where obviously it's large enough of an area, coming from a perspective of being like one of those specialty classes where you're trying to like help out, buff people or support the team kind of thing. Even healing is a little bit trickier. So that sort of added another whole layer of challenge too. So what's nice about it is sort of adds this sort of level of attempted coordination rather than necessarily having people sort of kind of do whatever as far as like, being all over the place, which obviously can be a problem. It's nice to actually have people a bit more directed, and hopefully they follow a certain plan to help it succeed. Just whether or not how effective they are.
Yeah, effectiveness is always something that's up in the air. Let's go to Kay.
I like it. I love the feel of it all. I really like the where they set it. Like how it looks. I love the dragons. They're amazing. I think I would go with Norg on the whole. It's not quite something for everybody to do. Although I do like that they're. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, I think it's pretty good. I'd give it a B plus A minus kind of deal.
Yeah, I'd second I'd probably go A minus, B plus 2, maybe a little more towards the A minus side. One thing I noticed right off the bat is the hit points of all of the mobs, from the dragons to the artifact to all of the trash mobs, really seemed reasonable. It all seemed really balanced. The trash isn't hard to kill. You don't feel like they have way too many hit points. The dragons don't feel like they have too many hit points. Everything just feels like it's got a really nice, balanced polish to it. It can get a little laggy when you get a lot of mob spawning. Hopefully, patch 1 will kind of alleviate some of that. Norga, what would you give this for a grade?
I'd say a B plus to A minus. A minus with the other raid, but B plus in general overall. If that makes any sense.
It doesn't.
Oh shit.
That's okay. We're used to you not making very much sense. Art, how about your grade?
Yeah, probably a B plus somewhere around there. I do enjoy it, except for some of the laggy parts. It's just that's part of the aspects of what goes on. I suppose actually it maybe seems a little bit trickier because I think with a lot of these mobs, some of them can be destroyed so much easier by certain types of characters. Like we have Shrouded Casters, EINs, or whatever, plus Dreadnought characters. So, just agreeing with Nora before, sometimes it's not as easy to necessarily sort of contribute in a more effective kill count manner. So that being said, it's a little bit trickier for maybe some other people to kind of enjoy it if they're not quite as effective as some of those other classes and builds. Awesome.
So let's finish off. Let's talk about the Temple of Deathworm raid, and I think we'll start with Art this time.
Actually, I was lucky enough. I don't know if I should say lucky, but my first completion was on Elite. and we had a little trouble in there. I have to admit it's a little bit trickier coming in sort of and not having been up to speed as much as some of the other people have tried it. And that's not including, say, some of the people who might have done it on a Lamani or something. I like the fact that obviously there's a lot of different variability, but so it doesn't make it quite as easy for people to sort of kind of jump in. They have to sort of either kind of contribute or rely on other people to sort of like know certain aspects of the puzzles. So that being said, I mean, it's a little bit interesting, so at least you have an opportunity to have one particular raid where there's obviously a chance of variability, plus the fact that it's a much longer one, which I think is something we've never really had in DDO, like there are in, say, some other type of MMO games where it might be actually pretty common to actually face an elite type of raid or end game type of raid where you pretty much have to, have like a good solid 3 hours to do. But yeah, I do like it, except for obviously we've just had a little bit of issues with its release.
How about Kay?
I totally love that raid. I think it's awesome. I think concerning as far as what other people, I mean, you'll get a lot of pugs in there, obviously. I think it's really fun though when you get a whole group of people that knows what you're doing. It's a very, very quick raid. It's really not that long. But I like the flavor of it all. I like the different things they throw in. They throw in the puzzles. They throw in the other kind of puzzles. They throw in some scraps along the way. I like the mechanics upstairs, and yeah, I think it's a super solid raid. It's definitely one of my favorite raids in the whole game. Yeah, I had more to say, but I can't. Ravy's face is bugging me, Nord.
Well, I do have the ugliest player in DDO here, so I should hope so.
How about Nora? Why don't you give us your thoughts on the Death Worm raid?
I agree with a lot of what Kay said. It's a really well done raid and a lot of aspects. I like. I'll mention a couple of the negatives, but I want to just emphasize that it's like I think it's better than the other raid. It's just got a lot of different. There's tons of aspects. So one of the negatives that Kay mentioned was that it's not the best pug raid there is out there. So we've taught our share of pugs already this update, and they're still learning and they're struggling and all sorts of things. And it's really much more friendly to established players who are running it a lot. So that's just one little negative. One of the biggest positives though is I think every class can contribute. Any kind of build can really do something in there. So I like that a lot. And the puzzles, the variability, it feels a little bit like the Haunted Halls because you can, do different puzzles, have a different experience every time. The other thing, I like the mirrors. I just wish there was one or two less. And the other thing that you'll see on the forums, the only other negative comment would be that the Battle Ragers might have a little bit too many hit points, or maybe they should be a little bit more offensive, in a sense, and have a little less hit points or something to make it more interesting from the players, because we end up sticking somebody on, and like everybody else out there, having somebody kite the Battle Ragers is less fun. But overall, really great raid, and I would agree with Stocks, one of the best raids out there.
I'm probably going to be a little bit of a voice of dissension. I have some things I don't really like about that raid. I think it's one of those raids that has a very good design. I think it fell a little bit short on the implementation. There's a few places where the design is really good, but just kind of the balance doesn't seem right. You mentioned the hit points on the Battle Ragers. I really noticed when we were running on Epic Elite, in particular, Kay and I, just the two of us were trying to kill a wraith. So what happens if you die? A wraith spawns, and you can't get raised until that wraith dies. And that thing had way too many hit points, in my opinion. It was a chore for us to take down. granted we were running on Elite, but it felt like the hit points on that were just a little too high. I also felt like there's some mechanics that are based off of the boss's hit points. That you have to get some shadows to spawn to continue doing some of the raid mechanics. And I felt like, again, on Epic Elite in particular, but also on Hard, if your group isn't really well organized and isn't doing a lot of really good DPS and really controlling the trash very well, it really spirals out of control. And that mechanic of getting the shadows to spawn, it felt like it doesn't happen often enough. It kind of felt like I wanted it to happen a little more often. Or I wanted the casters that spawn with the trash, they buff the dragon. I kind of felt like either the dragon needed fewer hit points, those casters needed to spawn at a little bit slower of a rate, or shadows needed to spawn more frequently. So there's a little bit of balancing there. I also felt there are too many mirror puzzles. The first couple mirror puzzles are fine, but I think there's 6 total mirror puzzles in there. And it's just a little too tedious to do all 6 of them. I also felt that particularly the gravity room and the red light green light room, I felt like those 2 rooms in and of themselves felt like a quest within a quest. Partly because we didn't really know the gravity room and kind of struggled through that a little bit. But I felt like those 2 rooms could maybe could have gone into something that needed a little bit longer of a feel to a quest as opposed to a raid that is already a little on the lengthy side, comparatively anyways.
Yeah, that aspect reminds me of Litany, where it's basically sometimes if you have designated people to do the puzzles or whatever, then the rest of the raid just sits around doing nothing for an extended period of time. I remember that exact raid that you're talking about where we were trying to figure out the gravity, and I'm pretty sure I went AFK for a good 30 minutes or so. But hopefully, just like Kay was saying, is that once you start getting people who actually know what they're doing, then it actually could be quite fast. But it's just a long growing pain, I guess.
But even then, you mentioned the Abbott raid where 3 people do the raid and the other 9 go AFK for an hour, and then you do the boss fight.
I wanted to say one more I didn't get to, and that was the phylacteries. From a pug standpoint, I am not a fan of either killing the phylacteries at the same time, although we're getting better at the one at a time method for pugs. But I think there's a huge advantage on that segment for guild groups or static groups versus pug groups. Probably too big of an advantage. So that's just something that they should think about on that read.
Yeah.
Everything that you guys have just mentioned, I actually see as pluses. The whole gravity room definitely took long, and the red light, green light can be trying, but I think they're fantastic. Again, because those are all one of 3 choices, right? Like you have choices, which is one of the strengths of the raid that we mentioned. So that's fantastic. I really like that those casters spawn fast enough because eventually we pulled it off, and it was a switch in tactics, taking them all down at the same time. The only thing I completely concur with is that stupid Shadow Wraith and art. I hope you still feel responsible for that.
Was that his?
Res myself here and give those guys a 5 million hit point Wraith to deal with.
Hey, if me being a healer on that particular raid, if some ranged tune would have actually gotten them off of me so that I wouldn't have particularly died. But you forgot the one aspect, Kay, where you talked about all the things that you liked about it, but you didn't mention. Obviously, the assumption here is that you must like all those mirror puzzles purely because you're so vain.
I missed you cut out for some of that, but
that's okay.
The mirror puzzles, I also just did want to mention that. As I was saying, they can be if one person's doing all the mirrors. It can be a little long, but honestly, if you've got 4 people out there, it takes you no more than 15 seconds for the whole thing. So, you can be through that stuff pretty fast. Yeah,
although I would say for me, anyways, at that point, because there's not that much variety in the mirrors, it almost becomes just a task to perform just to move on. It's not. Puzzles should be fun. They shouldn't be rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. There should be a little bit of thinking involved. I'd rather it be like half as many of those mirror puzzles and have them be more randomized, and you have to like figure the puzzle out a little more, as opposed to what they are right now.
I think actually, I think what they should do is cut some of those mirror puzzles and make us do one more, either the red green light or gravity room. Add one of those in there and cut a couple of mirror puzzles out.
That'd be an option for sure. So let's go around the table. And, give any last thoughts on the Death Worm raid, and also let's give it a grade. And we'll start with Norg.
I'm gonna say A-.
Okay.
Short of the loot drop rate. And last, here's my last thought on. Yeah, I think they should. My one issue with that raid really is when you run it on Elite. It's first off, it's fantastic. Nobody's just gonna run through there on Elite. I really appreciate that. When you run Elite, you've run Elite. I just wish they would make the reward a bit more worth it rather than just bragging rights. Make there a reason for people to run Elite, so it's done more than once a month or 2 months. And other than that, I think that's I give it an A+ or an A++. I love it.
I do want to say they are with patch 1, the phlogiston pieces that you need for crafting on Epic Elite are going to start dropping at 100% of the time as opposed to a chance. And I have a suspicion that the raid loot drop rate is bugged for both raids because I haven't seen a single piece of a loot drop in a chest yet. So Art, why don't you throw out your grade here?
I haven't really ran it all that often. Only about 3 times. Actually, one in every difficulty. So I've actually had an opportunity to sort of get an idea of sort of a bit of the scaling. But actually, I thought it was pretty good, except for maybe I'm a little biased because my experience is I didn't really quite know exactly what was going on. So it's one of those things where I'm not quite sure if it was as obvious for somebody kind of coming in as a pug. If I consider myself that, for it to be obvious of what you're supposed to do. So it's one of those things you're kind of figuring out. So maybe I just wanted to be a little bit more dumbed down for my own sake. So maybe more like a B+-ish. And I do agree about the loot drops and some of the other stuff and some of the spawn rates and hit points on some of these mobs. It can create a really poor experience for some people who aren't really prepared. But, what do you expect for endgame? Everybody really should be prepared going in.
Yeah, I would say I'd probably come in around a B-, and I think that's mostly comes with the kind of the balance with the hit points. And I don't mind that the main mechanic of the boss fight is very complicated. It just feels like because of how complicated it is, the number of opportunities you get to do it because you have to get the shadows to spawn. If you're not in a well-oiled group, in my experience, it can drag down a lot. And then also just the Wraith hit points is just really a little bit ridiculous, in my opinion, particularly since someone is out of the party is not able to participate until that is completed. So I would like to see those Wraiths get a pretty heavy nerf bat and hit points. Make it reasonable that 1 or 2 people can kill it, and at least no more than 2 minutes on Elite, wailing away at it. Without too much difficulty. Otherwise, it's too much of a death mechanic, I think.
Just one quick question. So is there actually a reason why when you, as Norg would say, perish, that you actually have to run away from your soul stone a couple of times over just to be able to be raised? Well, the mechanic is supposed to be
that you kill the Wraith to get spawned. The running away from the Soul Stone thing is probably a bug and will probably be fixed at some point.
Which is another reason why the Wraith hit point should be lowered.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It would be insane.
Very good point, Art. They really got to lower that for that reason.
Well, I was thinking, here's another option, is if they did it intentionally, if it's not a bug, it could just be a new kind of timer, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It gives the chance for a Wraith to run around and kick butt for a few minutes. and at the same time, you got to take at least 20 or 30 seconds to raise. So it's not an immediate raise, and there is no raise timer on things, right? You just can't raise until you've run away from your stone twice. So it's possible it's intentional.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too, because obviously, there's that variability in, say, something like Fall of Truth, where you literally have to wait a certain amount of time, and it scales depending on difficulty, where that can be extremely problematic. Whereas if at least people were working together and on the ball, they ran away from your stones and basically snapped back within a certain amount of time, you can count on them to be actually proactive.
Yeah, all good thoughts on that. Anyone else, before we close out, anyone else want to say anything about any of the new content? All right, guys. Thanks very much for joining me. Really appreciate you taking some time to do that. And looking forward to running some more raids with you guys. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for helping me out with that. Really appreciate it. Hope that gave some nice insight into what at least a group of players considered Update 21 and how well it came out and how well it plays. Really appreciate those guys for taking some time to be on the show with me. What have I been doing? Mostly trying to get my characters flagged for the endgame raids. I have a pile of characters, so I finally mostly finished. There's a couple of characters I have that I still need to level up to that area of content, so I need to work on that, which will hopefully be the main push for this coming week. Survey question for the week. Hereticus asks, what's the best way to farm +4 tomes? Short answer is, there isn't. The best way to farm +4 tomes is to run content that +4 tomes drop in. So the higher the content you run, the more likely you are to find +4 tomes. There's not really any one quest that I would drive you to out to play. Mostly I would just say run high-level content with as many chests as you can, and just keep running it and keep playing in there. Tomes are not really something that I make it a point to farm. The closest thing you're going to get to a reliable way to get tomes is by running raids and getting 20th completions, because there's generally at least a chance of tomes, although even the higher level raids, that's not necessarily a sure chance, and it's not necessarily going to be a raid or a tome that you want to get. As an example, my barbarian has a +4 charisma tome sitting in the bank because he has pulled 2 of them from the raid Tower of Despair completion list. So there's not really a great way to farm +4 tomes. They're kind of a rare random drop. They can drop anywhere in any chest, given that you're running the chest at a level appropriate. But, look for +1 loot weekends. Use plus loot gems. That'll kind of increase your chances. The higher level you can make the chest. You can grab the chest blessing dragon mark chain. That's also an option. But really, it's more about how many chests do you open that are level appropriate for that level. And I apologize, off the top of my head, I'm not really sure what the level for that is, but I think it's pretty high if you're not running a raid. So with that, I'll say thanks to the guys that joined me, Norg, Kay, and Art, for the round table. Thanks to all those that are helping with the show and contributing to the show and being guests on the show. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for telling other folks about us. The fact that we have a lot of listeners is kind of the reason why we do the show. It's a lot of fun and helpful for you guys. Thanks to Turbine and Wizards for making great games, and thanks to Cybears for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for the show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you want to be a part of the show, you just want to say hi, you can email us at DDOcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates or in-game via join channel DDOcast. The closing tip for the week, Boa recommends that you use a controller from the Xbox 360, especially with melee builds. I imagine that would be a lot of fun to play that way. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chest level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to enjoy Update 21.